3 years! That's how long I was trapped in darkness. My body broken, my mind drifting in a coma no one thought I'd wake from. When I finally opened my eyes, the world I knew was gone. Everything I had ever loved was stolen from me. I woke up to silence. A hospital room filled with strangers who looked at me like a ghost. And then I saw her, Emily, my wife. But she wasn't the woman I remembered. There was no warmth in her eyes, no spark in her smile. It was like I had become a stranger to her overnight. Worse, the warmth I once thought was ours had shifted somewhere else. And then there was Jason, my best friend since childhood. The man I trusted more than anyone. The man who promised to stand by me no matter what. But now, he stood beside Emily, holding her hand like it was his own, like I never existed. I tried to speak, tried to hold her gaze, but she looked through me as if I was already dead. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. While I was fighting for my life, while my body lay still and silent, someone else had stepped into my place. Someone I thought would never betray me. How could this happen? How could the people I loved most abandon me in the darkest moment of my life? There was a lie beneath the surface, thick, ugly, and suffocating. A secret so painful I almost wished I had never woken up to see it. I was supposed to be the husband, the friend, the man she promised to love forever. But now I was nothing, a shadow of a past life erased without warning. And just like that, everything I believed about love, loyalty, and friendship shattered into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever pick up. The hardest part? Knowing this was only the beginning. Before everything fell apart, my life felt like a story written perfectly for me. I'm Adam, 32 years old, working as an architect, obsessed with details and blueprints, but hopelessly messy when it comes to my personal life. If you had asked me about my future, I would have painted a bright picture. A loving wife, a cozy home, a steady job, and a friendship that felt unbreakable. Emily was my everything. We met in college. She was studying literature, always buried in books, with this infectious laugh that could light up the darkest days. I remember the first time I saw her at the campus cafe, struggling to hold a pile of novels in her arms. I helped her, and somehow, that simple act began the most beautiful chapter of my life. For 5 years, Emily and I built a life that felt bulletproof. We had small routines that made every day feel special. Sunday morning pancakes, evening walks in the park, and those late-night talks where we shared our dreams and fears. She knew every silly habit I had, like how I always misplaced my keys or my stubborn love for old rock music. And I loved her for every detail. The way her eyes sparkled when she was excited, the softness in her voice when she whispered goodnight. Jason has been my best friend since childhood. He was the guy who showed up at my worst moments without question. We grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools, and shared secrets that no one else knew. Jason was loud where I was quiet, reckless where I was cautious, but somehow we balanced each other perfectly. I trusted Jason with my life. He was more than a friend, he was my brother. And when Emily came into the picture, the three of us became inseparable. We laughed, celebrated, and even argued like a family. I never imagined that the people closest to me could be the ones who would hurt me the deepest. Our life wasn't perfect. No marriage is. But I believed that with love, trust, and patience, we could weather anything. There were little cracks, sure, Emily's long hours at work, my late nights at the office, but nothing that felt threatening. We had plans to start a family soon, and we talked about buying a house by the lake. I was excited to be building more than just buildings. I was building a future. Emily was more than my wife. She was my partner in every sense. She supported my dreams, encouraged my quirks, and made me feel like I mattered. Our home was filled with laughter, love notes stuck on the fridge, and photos of trips we took together. Every day, I felt lucky to have her. Jason was always part of that picture. He was at our weddings, birthdays, and lazy weekends. He was the friend who knew how to make Emily smile when I couldn't, and the one I turned to when I needed advice. We shared a bond that felt like it could never break. But underneath the surface of our perfect little world, I missed the subtle signs, the hurried phone calls, the late-night texts, the moments when Emily seemed distracted. I told myself it was nothing, that we were just busy, just tired. I believed in us. I had to. Because love is blind, and sometimes it's deaf to the cracks before the fall. It started with a whisper, a sound I barely noticed at first. The kind of quiet that creeps in around the edges of a picture-perfect day and distorts everything. One evening, I was still weak but desperate to feel normal. The hospital had become my entire world for 3 years, but today, Emily said she'd come visit. I was eager to see her face again, to hear her voice like it used to be, warm, full of life. But when she arrived, something felt off. Her smile was tight, her eyes flickering like she was hiding something. That night, as I lay in bed, the silence of the room pressed down on me. The only sound was the steady beep of the monitor and the faint rustle of the nurse's footsteps outside. I reached for my phone. It felt strange, unfamiliar in my weak hands, but then I saw it. A notification blinking on Jason's phone that sat unattended on the bedside table. Curiosity gnawed at me. I glanced around. No one was watching. The message was short, but it shattered me. "Can't wait to see you again. Tonight was amazing." My heart slammed against my ribs. What did that mean? Who was he talking to? I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach, but I told myself I was imagining things. Jason and Emily were close, but best friends don't send secret messages like that. Right? Days passed, but the unease wouldn't leave me. Emily's visits became less frequent, and when she was there, her warmth felt distant, like she was miles away, trapped in her own thoughts. Jason's smiles were too quick, his laughter forced. There was a weight between them I couldn't ignore. Then came the night I couldn't forget. Emily said she was out running errands. I waited, staring at the door, hoping she'd walk back in and everything would be okay. But instead, I heard voices, a familiar laugh, Jason's. They were downstairs, just beyond the door, speaking low enough that I couldn't make out the words, but loud enough for my heart to hear. I stood there, frozen. The sound of her laugh, something I used to cherish, felt like a betrayal. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my voice was weak, my body barely able to move. A few days later, I decided to confront the truth head-on. Emily had left her phone unattended on the kitchen counter. I hesitated, every fiber of my being telling me not to. But the fear of not knowing was worse than the pain of discovery. Scrolling through her messages, I found texts from a woman named Maya. Flirtatious, secretive, and unmistakably intimate. One message stood out. "You're my escape. Can't wait to be with you again." My hands trembled. I swallowed hard. The betrayal was real, but I still didn't know the full story. Was it Emily, Jason, or both? Every familiar place in our home suddenly felt foreign. The photos on the walls, the gifts exchanged, they all seemed like lies. I confronted Emily that night, but she just looked away, eyes full of sorrow and something else I couldn't name. Guilt? Fear? She said, "It's complicated, Adam. Please, just wait." But waiting was a poison. The unknown clawed at my sanity. I realized then that the life I had known was crumbling beneath me, piece by piece, and the people I trusted most were at the center of it all. Every night since that discovery, my mind has been a battlefield. I lie awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of 1,000 questions crushing me from every side. Who was Maya? Why was she in Emily's messages? And why did Jason keep sending her secret texts? Were they together? Was this the reason Emily had changed? Or was there something even darker, lurking beneath the surface? I replay every moment in my head. Her distant smile, his forced laughter, the way they looked at each other when they thought I wasn't watching. But I want to believe it's all a mistake. Part of me clings to the hope that I'm just imagining things, that maybe it was an innocent friendship, a misunderstood message, or a cruel trick of my tired mind. But deep down, something gnaws at my soul. The truth is clawing its way out, and I'm terrified of what I'll find. I've always been the kind of man who believes in loyalty, the kind who thinks love is stronger than any storm. But now, I feel like a stranger in my own life, drowning in a sea of betrayal. Emily's avoidance cuts the deepest. When I ask her about the messages or the late nights, she shuts down. Her eyes don't meet mine. Sometimes I catch a flicker of guilt, but she never confesses. Instead, she tells me, "I just want to protect you." Protect me? From what? I want to believe her, but every secret she keeps feels like a knife twisting inside my heart. Jason, too. Our conversations have become strained and awkward. The easy camaraderie we once had is gone, replaced by silence and half-truths. When I try to talk to him, he dodges my questions or changes the subject. Once, he even laughed nervously and said, "Adam, you're overthinking it. You're still recovering. You don't need this stress." But how can I not think about it? How can I ignore the shadows that have taken over my home? Sometimes I find myself staring at old photos, snapshots of happier times. Emily's smile, Jason's goofy grin, my own hopeful eyes. It feels like a cruel joke, as if those memories belong to someone else, someone untouched by betrayal. I catch myself wondering, was I ever really awake before? Was I blind to the cracks forming beneath the surface of my perfect life? One night, overwhelmed by confusion, I walked the empty halls of our house, trying to make sense of it all. The silence screamed at me. The rooms that once held laughter now echoed with doubt. I asked myself, did they ever love me? Or was I just a fool holding on to a lie? My heart ached for answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. In moments of despair, I find myself slipping into denial. Maybe it's easier to believe they're innocent, to pretend this nightmare isn't real. Maybe if I ignore the signs, everything will go back to the way it was. But denial is a fragile shield. Every time I close my eyes, I see Emily's distant gaze, Jason's secretive glances. I hear whispered conversations that stop when I enter the room. The fear is suffocating. The fear of losing everything I thought I had. The fear of waking up one day and realizing my life is nothing but a memory of what could have been. Yet, amidst the chaos of emotions, a small part of me refuses to give up. I still want to believe in us. The us before the lies, before the betrayal. I cling to the hope that there's a way to fix this, to heal the wounds, to reclaim the love that feels lost. But how do you fight an enemy you can't see? How do you trust the ones who keep secrets in the shadows? Every day is a war between hope and despair, between love and betrayal. And I'm standing in the middle, trying to hold on to the pieces of a life that feels like it's slipping through my fingers. I don't know how this story will end, but one thing is clear. I can't keep living in the dark. I have to find the truth, no matter how much it hurts. Just when I thought I had seen the worst of it, the truth came crashing down harder than I ever imagined. It started with a whisper from a voice I never expected, Jason's sister, Claire. I didn't realize how close she'd been watching everything, or how much she knew beneath the surface. One evening, she called me out of the blue. "Adam, she said quietly, her voice trembling. "There's something you need to know. Something Emily and Jason have been hiding." My heart pounded in my chest as I met her in a dimly lit cafe, the kind of place where secrets hung thick in the air like smoke. Claire's eyes darted nervously, and the trembling in her hands made me realize this wasn't just gossip. This was something real, something dangerous. "They're not just having an affair," Claire said, voice barely above a whisper. "It's worse. It's about everything you thought you knew about Emily." I stared at her, disbelief tightening my throat. "What do you mean?" She leaned closer, lowering her voice even more. "Emily's been hiding something from you for years, something that could destroy you." The weight of her words pressed down on me, suffocating and cold. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but the fear of what I might hear held me still. Later that night, driven by a desperate need to know, I searched Emily's things. I found a locked drawer in her desk, something I'd never bothered to open before. My hand shook as I fumbled with the keys I found taped underneath. Inside were letters, old, yellowed, and fragile. Letters from a man I'd never heard of. The handwriting was elegant, but the words were haunting. One letter read, "You promised me you'd never leave, no matter what happened with Adam." Another said, "If he finds out, it'll ruin everything. But you can't keep living this lie." My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Who was this man? Why was Emily writing to him in secret? And why did she promise him loyalty over me? The next day, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted Emily with the letters. Her face went pale, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Adam," she whispered, "there's something I never told you. I wanted to protect you, protect us." I demanded the truth. She swallowed hard and finally admitted it. Years before we met, Emily had a complicated past, one tied to a dangerous man she was trying to escape. That man wasn't just some stranger. He was someone powerful, someone who could ruin her if he found out she had moved on. "And Jason?" I asked, voice shaking. Emily looked away, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He's been helping me. Not because he wanted to betray you, but because he was trying to keep me safe." I wanted to believe her, but the betrayal cut deeper than any knife. How long has Jason been part of this secret? How much had they both lied to me? My world collapsed all over again, the foundation I thought was solid now crumbling beneath me. The lines between friend and enemy blurred. The love I had for Emily tangled with the betrayal I felt from both her and Jason. I didn't know who to trust anymore. That night, I lay awake, haunted by the letters, by Claire's words, by Emily's confession. The life I thought I had built was a house of cards, fragile, unstable, and ready to fall. But somewhere beneath the rubble, a new determination burned. I needed to know the whole truth, no matter how dark or painful. Because if this secret had been buried so deeply, there was no telling what else was waiting to be uncovered. The moment I'd been dreading finally arrived. I couldn't live in the shadows anymore, not with lies suffocating every breath I took. I called Emily and Jason to the old cabin on the edge of town, the place where I'd spent countless days dreaming of our future. Now, it was the stage for the reckoning. Emily showed up first, her face pale and drawn, eyes flickering with a mixture of fear and defiance. Jason came moments later, his usual confident smirk replaced by something tight and uncertain. The air was thick, charged with tension and the unsaid. I stood in the center of the room, my hands clenched into fists, heart pounding like a drum. "Why?" I asked, voice cracking with the weight of everything. "Why did you betray me? How long has this been going on?" Emily swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill over. "Adam, it wasn't betrayal. I never wanted to hurt you. I was scared, terrified of what would happen if the past caught up with me." Jason's eyes flicked between us, then finally landed on me. You don't understand. I was trying to protect her. And you. It wasn't what it looked like. I shook my head, disbelief boiling into rage. Protect me? By hiding everything? By lying? You made me a fool. Emily stepped forward, voice trembling. I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. Love? I spat the word out like venom. How can I believe that everything was a lie? Jason's face hardened. You think we wanted this to happen? You think I wanted to be the villain? No, I said, voice barely above a whisper. But you are. You betrayed me. Both of you. Emily's tears flowed freely now. I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was saving us. Saving us? I laughed bitterly. You destroyed us. For a long moment, silence swallowed the room. Then, unexpectedly, Jason spoke. His voice low, raw with emotion. I never wanted to lose you, Adam, but sometimes, to protect the people you care about, you have to make impossible choices. I looked at him, searching for the friend I once knew, but finding only a stranger. And in that moment, everything broke open. The walls of lies crumbled, leaving only raw, painful truth. I realized then that the person I loved was no longer the same Emily I married. And Jason, my best friend, was trapped in a web of secrets as tangled as mine. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Maybe, I said finally, voice steady but heavy, the person I loved was just a memory, and the life I thought I had was a lie. Emily's sobs filled the room as Jason looked away, guilt written all over his face. I don't know if we can fix this, I continued, but I need to find out who I am without the lies. I turned to leave, but Emily's voice stopped me. Adam, please. I didn't look back. The door slammed behind me like the closing of a chapter I wasn't ready to read. Outside, the cold night air bit at my skin, but it felt cleansing, like the first breath after drowning. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel: clarity. I didn't have the answers yet. The path ahead was dark and uncertain. But I knew one thing with brutal certainty. I would no longer be a prisoner of betrayal. I would fight to reclaim my life, no matter what it took. And this was only the beginning. The days after that night were a blur. Fragments of memories, raw emotions, and the unbearable silence of a life unraveling. I stayed away from Emily and Jason, needing space to breathe, to think, to understand what I had become. I wandered the city streets alone, haunted by the echoes of laughter and promises that now felt like cruel jokes. Every corner, every cafe, every park bench reminded me of what was lost, or perhaps what was never truly mine to begin with. But as the pain settled, something else started to grow inside me, a slow-burning ember of strength, of hope, of determination. I realized that I had been living in a cage built by others, by secrets, lies, and broken trust. And now the door was open. It was time to step out. I found myself at the edge of a small lake one evening, the sun dipping below the horizon in a blaze of gold and crimson. The water was still, reflecting the sky's fire like a mirror. I sat down on a weathered bench and let the silence wash over me. The truth hit me like a wave. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us deepest. Emily had been my world. Jason, my brother in all but blood. But love alone couldn't fix the fractures that had torn us apart. I thought about forgiveness, not as a gift for them, but as a way to free myself. It wasn't easy. Forgiving their betrayals, their secrets, meant facing my own pain, my own mistakes. It meant accepting that love sometimes comes with scars. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I reached out to old friends, found new hobbies, and rediscovered the parts of myself I had buried beneath years of trust, and heartbreak. Work became my refuge, a way to channel the chaos into something productive, something real. One afternoon, I bumped into Claire at a bookstore. Her eyes held the same sorrow and guilt I'd come to understand all too well. "I'm sorry for dragging you into all this," I said quietly. She shook her head. "No, Adam, you deserve to know the truth, and maybe now we both can find a way forward." Her words stayed with me. Maybe some wounds heal slowly, but they do heal. Weeks turned into months, and the weight on my chest began to lift. I didn't seek Emily or Jason out. Some bridges, once burned, are best left behind. But I carried no hatred, only lessons learned in the hardest way possible. One night, I sat alone again, but this time, there was a quiet peace inside me. I pulled out an old photo of Emily and me, smiling, hopeful, innocent. I whispered, "Thank you, for the love, for the pain. You made me who I am today." And with that, I let go. Because healing isn't about forgetting, it's about choosing to live beyond the hurt. As I looked up at the stars, I felt a flicker of something new. Maybe even a chance at love again, but on my terms. The future was uncertain, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face it. Because sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another.